Welcome back, everybody. I am Pastor Liana, and this is Walk It Out, a journey through the Bible. Those of you guys who've gotten the first video already, you know what we are all about, what I am all about, what this is all about. This is all about literally taking a journey through the Bible together, week by week, book by book, chapter by chapter. Last week, we just gave a quick introduction to what we'll be doing for the next couple of weeks. For those of you guys who are on my email list, you receive the questions for this week, which means you should be ready to already dig into Genesis chapter 1 with me today. And so I'm just really excited about this process. I'm excited about this journey. I'm all excited about what God has to reveal to us as we take this journey together through the Bible. I'm not a Bible expert. I am a seminary student. I am a pastor. I'm just a girl with a heart and a passion for the Word of God and help bringing it to life in our lives together. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to literally journey through the Bible. A lot of people, you may know your favorite scripture, your favorite passage or whatever, but not too many people really know the overall narrative of the Bible, especially in this generation. I mentioned last week where there's a lot of churches have moved away from either like Sunday school formats or vacation Bible schools, those formats where you would dig in and actually get an understanding of the stories and the narratives that are taking place and understanding God's overarching love story. We've moved more into the format of just kind of Sunday morning sermons, which are a lot of times topically based or passage based, but doesn't zoom out and give you the big picture. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying if you don't have another outlet where you are studying and knowing and understanding the overarching narrative, this is that outlet where we can do this together. Let's jump into this week's discussion. We're talking about Genesis chapter 1, but I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about how to understand and interpret the Bible. First of all, the Bible, yes, it's one book, but it's one book composed of 66 different books. And those books composed of different authors, different intentions, right? Different, even literally different historical times when you're reading the book. And so it's very important to not just see the Bible as one book. Anyone that understands literature, interpretation, and that's a lot of us when we've gone through school, we've zoomed out and said, what is the genre of this piece of literature that we are studying or interpreting? Because genre plays a really big role in understanding the message of the book, understanding the message of the piece of artwork. Or if it's a poem, you got to know it's a poem, right? When you're going into interpreting a poem, you're not going to handle it the same way if you're reading a history book. And the Bible is the same way. The Bible is composed of various genres. Different scholars or different people reading it may break it down into some different categories, and you'll see some variations here and there, but for the most part, the categories are pretty consistent. And let's just jump into what those categories are. I have my notes here on my iPad. So the Bible basically has 7 different genres. From Genesis to Revelations, you will find various types of genres throughout the different books. And it's important to know what genre your book is or the book you're reading is when you go into reading it and understanding it, because that plays a really big role in the message that's being communicated and how to understand that passage or how to understand that book. So the Bible basically has 7 different genres. You have narrative / history. Some people will say narrative and history are separate, but generally they can go into one category. Narrative meaning telling a story, right? Usually telling a story of a person's life or people's lives. And so a narrative is more story based. So you say narrative / history. History, some people separate those two because history has more to do with like sociologically and politically and even historically. This book zooms out and has more of a bigger picture of what's going on historically. But I combined those two because the narrative and history pretty much are consistent. And you'll see different books of the Bible that fall into that category. Some of the Kings, a lot of the Old Testament falls into that category. And actually the book we're studying today and for the next couple of weeks, Genesis, falls into that category as far as narrative / history, right? So we'll see both of that really displayed in the book of Genesis. You have law, and that's a separate category because you'll find in the Old Testament primarily certain books that are dedicated to communicating God's law. And we'll go more into that when we, like I said, when we study the book, like Leviticus is one of those books. Poetry. Poetry is also present in the Bible, so you're not going to interpret a poetic book the same way you interpret a law book or history/narrative book, right? So poetry is more of, or wisdom books, Proverbs, even the book of Psalms is Psalms/poetry, and you'll find that you'll find the psalm poetry type books also more so in the Old Testament. As we go from book to book, I will highlight what genre that book is, so as we go into it, you have the broader understanding of what's taking place in this book, in this chapter. You have, well, actually, wisdom is a separate category. Wisdom is primarily the book of Proverbs. Primarily, you definitely see wisdom passages in other books, but primarily the book of Proverbs is a wisdom book. You'll have prophecy/apocalypse, and the reason why I said slash is, once again, prophecy, if you know, understanding prophecy, are books that foretell the future. Sometimes it's prophetic in the sense that it's foretelling something, even though it's already happened in time, because of when we receive the Bible. You'll see like the different prophets or prophesying. For example, the book of Isaiah is going to prophesy about the coming Messiah, which is Jesus, but we don't find out who that Messiah is until we get to the New Testament, which is thousands of years later. That's just as an example. So you have books of prophecy. Apocalypse is prophetic, but I put /apocalypse, and a lot of scholars will put /apocalypse because those books are specifically talking about the end times, which have not occurred yet. So that's really, you'll find like in passages in the book of Daniel and even the book of Revelations that are prophetic, but those are very special in their types of prophecy, which are apocalypse, which is speaking of the end times, the last days, when the earth is ending, what those signs and wonders and what that's going to be like. And so you're not going to interpret that type of book the same way you're going to interpret a poetry or wisdom book or even law, because they have different purposes. And so you need to read them with that lens in mind. The Gospels, even though technically can fall under history and narrative, they get their own category because they are so amazing and unique in their own right. And that is because the Gospels, which stands for the good news, the word gospel stands for good news. The Gospels specifically tell us about the life, the ministry of Jesus Christ. And so they deserve their own category. There's 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that fall into that category. And there are 4 different perspectives on the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. And so they, though technically are narrative or even historical in their nature, they deserve their own category because these hone in on our Savior. They hone in on the life, the nature, the life, the person, the ministry, and all the way to the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that's very unique. It's very central to our faith. And so they deserve their own category. And then the last one is epistles. Epistles is another word for letters. So you'll find certain books in the Bible that are specifically letters. So you'll know the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. You'll realize that a lot of the books that he wrote, which is a majority of the New Testament, are letters. They're letters to people. They're letters to churches primarily. And so they deserve their own genre because a letter addressing a specific congregation, a specific group of people, even though there's principles for us to gain from that, you have to understand what is exactly happening in that church or to those people that the letter's being written to. So when you interpret that book, you need to interpret it from a lens of who is the dominant recipient, what is the message that's being taught or given to the dominant recipient, and then me, or the primary recipient, and then me, the church of today, the Christians of today, we're the secondary recipients of those letters. And so how we interpret the message or receive the principles, we have to understand that lens needs to be first and foremost, who is the letter being addressed to and what is going on in their context. So I highlight that because it is important to interpret the Bible as a literary genre and the different literary genres, because a lot of times people take certain things literally that don't need to be taken literally because that's not the genre, where other things that need to be taken literally. And so it's really important to know the essence of those genres when we jump into understanding what the Bible's communicating. So today we're jumping into the book of Genesis. Genesis, the word itself means the beginning, or the origin of, or the first of. And so what we know, or even Genesis means beginnings. Genesis means beginnings. And so it's important that it's interesting, it's even important. The first book of the Bible is called Genesis, and that word itself means the origins. And so what we know about the book of Genesis is that is exactly what it is. Not only is it the first book of the Bible, but in the book of Genesis, you find a lot of the firsts, a lot of the origins. And let me just list a couple of those. Genesis, you'll find the beginning of time, creation and humanity. You'll find first mention of human relationship with God and with one another, with other humans. The book of Genesis, you'll find the first sign of the devil, or I will call it devil figure. In Genesis, you'll find the first act of sin and rebellion of man against God. You'll find the first murder in the book of Genesis. A sibling kills another. In the book of Genesis, you'll find the first form of giving of an offering to God, and we'll jump into that. In Genesis, you'll see the first distribution of grace to man from God, right? So you find the first sin, the first rebellion. What you also find then is the first sign of God's forgiveness or offering of grace to man, to human beings in that. The book of Genesis, you find God's first chosen group of people, or a person that God chooses to make his people and his lineage to become his people. We'll find that in Genesis. And we'll also find in Genesis the mentioning of God's plan for redemption. And so there are a lot of firsts. I don't know, there might even be some firsts that I didn't even realize that you may see as you're reading throughout the book. And so please send those in to me. Comment on the message or email me, walkitoutwithliana@gmail.com, and let me know what you noticed that maybe I have not mentioned or brought up in this time of our study together. So let's jump into the questions for this week that I sent you guys for Genesis chapter 1. I answered them based on my opinion. Once again, if there's anything that stood out to you, you have a different opinion or perspective on, I know this is kind of weird because it's a video, so it feels like a monologue, or it feels like just me doing the teaching, but it's not. It's an opportunity for us to engage together. So please comment on this video or email me directly, walkitoutwithliana@gmail.com, so that we can engage with one another and maybe even as a community grow together in our understanding of the Word of God. So let's go straight to Genesis chapter 1. So the first question I asked you guys was, where did God come from? I know that sounds like a basic question, but no, that's a really important question, because that question sets the tone to our entire understanding of God, humanity, divinity, the relationship between God and man, God and creation. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it sets that straight. It says, in the beginning, God created, right? If in the beginning God created, what we know is that God came from nowhere. The beginning began with God. God is the author of the beginning, and he is the source. And so what we know is that God does not have a beginning nor an end. He is the beginning to the beginning. But as for God, he has always existed. We have a beginning. Earth has a beginning. Heaven has a beginning. God doesn't have a beginning. And Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 sets that very straight, very clear. In some even philosophical conversations, I remember even being in college, and there's the conversation about everything having a cause and effect, right? And one of the ways that we talked about this idea of creation, this idea of there being a creator, which if you are of my paradigm and my worldview and the theistic one, you ascribe God, the God of the Hebrew and Christian Bible, as that creator. What we can conclude is if everything has a cause and effect, then there has to be an uncaused cause. There has to be a first cause, right, that put everything else into effect, everything else into emotion, that didn't have a cause of its own. Because if it had a cause and it was the effect of something else, the question becomes, what was that? And then whatever that is probably, that's God, that's the origin. So it's very clear to understand and to wrap your mind around, even though it's hard to wrap our mind around as humans, something not having a beginning, because we know everything to have a beginning. We had a beginning. Our parents birthed us into this world. If this cup had a beginning, that glass was formed from something. My iPad had a beginning, right? Everything that we know of in our human understanding, in our concept, is that everything has a beginning. But we have to understand that we have a beginning, but God doesn't. And even if you can't fully wrap your mind around that, because I still can't, some things you have to accept as true because they are true, even if our minds cannot fully understand what that means, because we only know things to have a beginning. So let's just jump to question number 2. I know the first one sounds basic, but it's not. It blows our minds to know that there's a God out there. There's a God who has no origin and yet set everything into motion and is in control. Oh, that's a whole nother sermon. Okay, let's just jump to number 2. What was God's first creation? Well, as according to verse 1, the creation of the heavens and the earth. Even heaven has a beginning. Sometimes we speak of the spiritual realm or as heaven as not having a beginning. As if earth had a beginning, but heaven doesn't. That heaven is God's home. But Genesis chapter 1 says, according to verse 1, the first creation was the heavens and the earth. And then I said the waters must have also been created at this point, because it only says that the Spirit, next it says the Spirit of God, right? Spirit hovered over the waters, but it did not mention when water was created. So I'm assuming it was included in the creation of the heaven and earth. I'm very clear that I'm saying this is my assumption, because the chapter goes on to talk about the separation of heaven's waters versus earth waters, but it never says when water was created. So my assumption is that water was created in the creation of the heavens and the earth. Let's jump to question number 3. The third question was, how did God make creation? What process did he use? It does not say how God created the heavens and the earth, because it just jumps into saying in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. But everything else says that God spoke creation into being. It says he spoke it into creation until we get to the creation of man, right? Then we can talk about that later on in Genesis chapter 2, because today is just about Genesis chapter 1. But in Genesis chapter 1, there was nothing for God to create from. It was just God. Literally, people say God, created something out of nothing. I disagree. God created everything out of himself. It says, when God created everything, he says, and then God said, and then God said. Read Genesis chapter 1 again. God spoke everything into creation. So he didn't create something out of nothing, and I get why people say that. It's because there was nothing there until God created everything. But I would argue God created everything out of himself, out of his own. He spoke it into existence. Out of his very being, he used his mouth and he spoke everything into existence. So everything we know of is a reflection of the verbiage of God. I could preach that. I'm not going to do that today. But it's God spoke out of his own essence. He decided, he spoke it, and there it was. Question number 4. After God made each creation, what were his remarks regarding his creation? Over and over, we see the statement that God saw it was good. So after he created light, after he created animals, after he created the waters from the sea and the land and the different types of animals, and the fish and the beasts on the earth, every single time the word says, and God saw that it was good. That God's opinion of his own work was, that's good. Number 5, what happened in verse 26 of chapter 1 that shifted the narrative? So we notice that everything else God created, and he said it was good, right? But in verse 26 was a game changer. It says, then God said, let us make man, or some translation will say human beings. The Hebrew word is Adam, A-D-A-M, where we call the first created person Adam. So your Bible may say man or human beings as synonyms. God said, let us make man in our own image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground. This is very, 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 very important. In verse 26, God changes the game. Before that, he makes the animals, and he makes the earth and the water and this and that, and he speaks it into existence. But in verse 26, God makes us. He makes you and me. He makes Adam. He puts Adam into position, and he says to himself, God says, we're going to do something special with this one. We're going to make them in our image. We are image-bearing creatures. We are made like God. We are made, if you notice, up until that point, God makes all of these things, but then he makes humans and puts humans in position to oversee and to steward and to take care of and to nourish and to love on the creation that he had already put to existence. But he says, not just that, God says, I'm going to make them in my image. There's something going to be special about humankind that's different than everything else I made. They're going to be a piece of me. They're going to be like me. I'm going to stamp them with my nature. Like that's crazy. I don't even think, like, as theologians, people try to explain all of what that means. And I think we have a good grasp and understanding of what it means to bear the image of God. But I don't even know if we ever can fully understand what it means to be made in God's image. Like, to know that a part of who I am, or my full essence, is not what the world says about me. It's not what media says about me. It's not what my parents say about me. It's not what society says about me. That at the end of the day, my identity, my value, my full total personhood is rooted and grounded in the fact that God said, I'm making her in my image. I made him in my image. That my value is based on the fact that I am made in the image of God. Question number 6. In verse 31, how did God feel about his creation after making humans? After making humans, God reviewed everything and called it very good. So not only am I made in the image of God, that it was not until humans were made that God changed his opinion from good to now it's very good. Now it's complete. I put humans in the earth. They are my image bearers. They are me in the earth. Like, no, we're not God, but he made us with a substance that is of himself, and he puts us in the earth, and he tells us to have dominion and to take care of and to reign and to rule and to be like God in the earth. And then he says it's very good. Question number 7. These are more, the next few questions are subjective. So they're not based on the text. They're based on like your own application of what you're learning from the scripture. And so number 7, I said, what did you learn about God from reading Genesis chapter 1? My personal answer, I put, God is detailed and intentional. He is the beginning of the beginning. God is the uncaused cause. I said that earlier. Like, God has no beginning. All that I know about God is because God has revealed it, and yet there's so much more that I don't know. God is greater than our human understanding, and yet he still chooses to reveal himself to us. So it's just like, whatever we think we know about God, that still isn't all of everything. And yet God is so intimate with man and so connected to us that he chooses to still reveal parts of himself to us, and that just makes me feel special. That makes me feel valued. That makes me feel like, man, I have a purpose. And God speaks to us and God shows himself to us. And it's just beautiful, and God's detail and God's intentional. And you read through chapter 1 and you see how the order in which God created things and how he went about giving certain responsibilities here and there and separating day from night and putting the sun and the moon in position. Like, God is so detailed. He's detailed with the creation. Of course he's detailed with my life, even when I don't see it. Which kind of goes into the next question. What spiritual principle can you learn from reading chapter 1? I put, I am not God, but I am like God. God gifted us his creation to steward it and care for it. And it really challenges me to ask myself the question, how well am I doing at that? If we want to know your purpose, go back to verse 26. You know, there's a lot of people out here saying, like, discover your purpose, and I totally agree. And it becomes the question of how well are you doing at stewarding the earth, the resources, the people, the position, the things God's giving you. How well are you doing that? Because that was the dominant role that he gave us as humans, to steward this earth well and to take care of it and each other. We learned that later on in the New Testament. And Jesus is very clear that God's greatest commandment is connected to how well we love God and how well we love one another. And Genesis makes it very clear how well we steward this earth that God gave us, God created. Are we abusing it, or are we taking care of it? Verse 9, I asked, how can you live your life differently this week based on what you learned from Genesis chapter 1? For me, I know that I struggle a lot with anxiety. and feeling like I need to know things and I need to have a full understanding of like what the next step in my life is going to look like. And sometimes, or even this week, or like just so much, and I get overwhelmed. But what Genesis chapter 1 showed me is that I can relax more, not live as if I am the one that's in control, but learn to trust God's ongoing creative processes, even in my life. Like, I'm not the author of all of this, God is. And in the midst of God being the author of all of this, he decided to create me. He decided to create you. He decided to create us. And in his deciding to create us, he also decided and mapped out a plan for our lives. And so even if I don't know what tomorrow, the next week, or next month is going to look like, I can sit back and relax and trust the capable and the full understanding and knowledge that God has of my life, even if I don't. And so one thing I'm learning more to do is to breathe, to relax, to enjoy this moment, to take on the journey of life and not to be overwhelmed by this need or desire to know it all, because I never will anyway. So I'm just causing myself undue anxiety, trying to unfold and interpret things that God hasn't revealed to me yet. But Genesis chapter 1 shows me I can sit back because I'm not the author of this anyway, God is. So yes, I have a purpose. I'm not saying be lazy. Now, I'm not saying don't be proactive about the life that you live. I'm just saying in your proactivity about your life, put at the center of that, God's in control. And so, yeah, that's this week. That's this week. I'm really excited. If you're getting this video, you already have the questions if you got the email for this week. But if you didn't get this from me in an email, maybe you just ran across this video or whatever, look below in the description. I list out the questions for next week so that you can read chapters 2 and 3 of Genesis and already be prepared for this discussion. So thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Walk It Out, a journey through the Bible. And I just look forward to moving forward with you guys in our understanding of God's word and how it applies to our life. Check you guys out later.